if you're listening, as what I want to ask you is, have you ever got caught and just said, you know what, you just want it quickly. And what you're really doing is you're actually skipping the process. Now, the process is really important, and the process is the delay. It's called delayed gratification. And in order to be effective in delayed gratification, what you're really going to be doing is you're going to be looking at what I call mining the gap. And mining the gap is really looking at who you're required to become, what are you required to do to get from point A to point B. Now, this is the interesting thing. The person who had the idea, whether it be hitting, getting into a different shape and truly transforming your body, whether it be starting a business, whether it be putting aside income for your financial freedom, or even planning for a vacation where you're going to pay for it cash. The person who birthed that idea is often not the person who's going to hit that target, who's going to achieve that goal. And the gap, when we call that mining the gap, it's like looking for the diamonds in that gap. And the diamonds are those little transformations, those little things that need to happen to have you achieve your goal. Now, what people do is they focus on, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And they get information, and it's like, okay, go on a diet, eat this, eat that. It might be put your money away, all those things. But what they're not looking at is, who am I required to be? Because this is the thing, the person and the habits that have you where you are not the person and the habits that are going to get you where you want to be. That's where the transformation needs to happen. That's where we're talking about when we talk about really mining the gap, right? So that's really what we're talking about. So let's dive into this a little bit more. And one of the part of the process is what I call mindset mastery, because this is what happens when we step into the gap. The gap is the delay, and most of us want things right away because that's how we're conditioned. To mind the gap is to live in the delay and shift a few things. Oftentimes it's shifting your thinking, right? And shifting it in understanding that it's not going to be like this. There is that delay. And the delay takes time, and the delay takes growth, and the delay takes transformation. So you might want to shift your thinking. You might want to shift the things you think about as you go through the process. The other thing is you've got to learn to manage your emotions, right? How you feel when there is a delay. And oftentimes we are conditioned that when there's a delay, that we give up. Right? We bail. We go, this is too hard. This is too long. I am not interested. And so we give up, right? That's the stuff where we're really starting to manage. The other thing that you've got to manage is your communication, right? How often is it that when you don't get what you want, it doesn't happen in the time frame you might have expected, that you start beating up on yourself? You start having conversations that are negative, and your self-talk is no longer inspirational. Your self-talk reflects more of your feelings of desperation, your feelings of loss, your feelings of anxiety, your feelings of frustration. That's all that happens in the gap. And that's probably how most people come to this process. And then they bail. And they bail because they don't know what's necessary to change that, to change the habits that are occurring. So they actually don't know what's necessary. So we're going to talk about what happens in that gap and how you can begin to mind the gap. So let me give you an example. When I first got into network marketing, I was convinced I was going to rock it. And I was convinced that it was going to happen quickly, and I was just going to get amazing results. And part of my rationale for that was I was coming to the table with skill sets. I had grown teams before. I knew I had some training background. I thought I was a people person, and I had been pretty successful in most things I did. So I thought, this is going to be cool. And also I was in a health and wellness company, and I had a health and fitness background. So it made perfect sense. So I dove in excited and expecting results. I didn't expect to go from 0 to 6 figures overnight, but I expected results. And what happened was I could get people to buy product, but I could not build a team. And if you understand network marketing, moving products is one thing, but building a network of people who consistently purchase and work with you is a whole other skill set. And so I began to get frustrated. And part of me, the conversation in my head was, this isn't working. You're never going to be able to do this. This is too hard. Let's figure out something else to do. And that conversation just started running in the background. And I went through a period of avoiding. I went through a period where I didn't want to pick the phone. And this is what I was up against my comfort zone. I was up against Suzanne. So this is where your emotional mastery happens. And I had to begin to manage and be present to my emotions and manage my self-talk, right? And that's the stuff that happens in the gap that allows you to get past it. And when I say that self-control, I'm really talking about self-mastery. And self-mastery is my ability to master and manage the conversations, the thoughts, the communication with myself that's going to take me out of the game, right? That's what self-control is. I don't particularly like self-control. I like to think that I am mastering who I am in the world, that I have an awareness and an insight of how I show up, and I'm learning to master it. So in that moment, when I was in network marketing, I had to begin to master my emotions. I had to begin to master my thinking. So what I did was I picked up the phone and I called a friend. And she gave me a reset. And what it was I told her I was struggling. I really didn't know what was going on. And she instantly shifted my thinking. And this is what she said to me. She said, Suzanne, most of us have been doing this for a long time. And we came to the table with a network of people who already do network marketing. So they had a network. And she said to me, you have to start building your network. That one conversation shifted everything. It shifted my thinking. It shifted the way I looked at the gap, because I knew there was smaller goals that I had to achieve in order to hit the target, which was build a team and make income. And so I began to look at, what did I need to do in the gap to learn to build a network? Well, I had to go out and learn how to connect with people. I had to learn to build relationships where people were really inspired by how I showed up. I had to be able to cast a vision that was so inspiring that people wanted to walk with me. I had to develop a new style of leadership, which was leading by example and becoming a product of my vision. In other words, I had to know with a certainty where I was going. So there was some smaller goals in between me getting to where I want, which was building a team, that I had to acquire. This is called mining the gap. And this is where you really begin to master the delay. So let's see what people are saying. So how many of you are now really getting what it means to delay and to mine the gap? And I'm going to give you some more details, but how many of you, just let me know, say, yes, I am. If you're saying, I get it, it's not focusing on where you're going, but it's focusing on who you're required to become in the gap. How you have to shift your mindset, how you have to shift your thinking, how you have to shift your communication, but most importantly, how you have to shift your habits and behaviors, right? And then you're beginning to shift who you are and how you show up. And in my mind, you then become the person that is able to achieve the miracle. So Taria is saying, yes, I do. Right. So it is, yeah, we're talking about the gap. So let me give you a few ways that you can mine the gap. And I've written them down because I want to make sure and give you everything. Okay. So the first thing in mining the gap, we all do it when we start, is we make a declaration, right? I am going to, so for me, it was, I'm going to build a massive team in network marketing. It might be that I am going to start a business. It might be that I am going to get in the best shape ever, right? So we make a declaration, and oftentimes our declarations are kind of loose, but we declare something, and it's almost like giving us ourselves a target down the road, right? And so we aim at something downline, a team in network marketing. It could be starting a brand new business. For some people that might be watching. It might be launching a product into the marketplace, right, Tria? So we set a target and we're aiming at it. And there's a distance between where I am and where my declaration is, which is way out there. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we want to do is we want to actually take that declaration and turn it into a specific and measurable target. Now, I'm not going to use goals. I want to use targets so you really get this. So specific and measurable target. So it might be that I want to build a network of 1,000 people within the next 12 months. Now that is very specific and it's out there, it's down there. So now I've taken my declaration and I've turned it into something specific and measurable. So now I really have a target, something really clear that I'm aiming at. And I'll know when I get there because there's numbers attached to it. So I can actually measure it. And, you know, if you were on the retreat with me, we talked about the data, right? I want some numbers so I can track the data. I can actually look at the analytics, as Taria always has me begin to do, as she supports me around my social media. So that's a person, hey, Dawn, nice to see you, welcome. So that's the thing that they're doing. So now I'm clear. Now this is where people actually fall down, because what people do is they now focus on some behaviors, right? So they focus on some behaviors and they say, okay, so I need to start talking to people. So they get all these behaviors and they focus on the behaviors that need to happen. And that's kind of a good thing. So for me, I knew I had to get on the phone. I needed to connect with people. I needed to invite people to join my network. I had some things I needed to do. But this is the interesting thing. So we set these goals. Now, I want to really get this clear for you. When you're mining the gap, you're not focusing on the target. You're actually focusing on the small goals that you can do. So anyone that works with me, I say, okay, between where you are and where you want to be, in that space where there is a delay, I want you to give yourself small wins. Those are goals to Suzanne. Small goals that you can achieve that will help you mine the gap. And what I say to people is don't focus on the target way in the distance. Each day, focus on the small goals that you can win. Because truly, the reason we have a challenge with delayed gratification is we're giving ourselves this big, audacious thing that we've got to win at. And of course, there's a delay. And really, what you want to look at is not the big thing, you know, the elephant. You want to look at the small pieces. So it might be, I had to learn how to connect and I got really good at it, right? I got really good at networking and connecting. I needed to learn how to cast a vision and I got really good at it. I actually had a mentor teach me how she casted a vision and I practiced and I got really good at it. I had to get really good at inviting people to join me, right? I had to get really good at asking for the sale. And we're going to talk about this in a moment, asking for the money. So there was some things that I had to do. I had to also begin to track my numbers. So I had to have behaviors where I was consistently doing a number of connections and calls each day. So all these things were in the gap. Now that's the doing. Now I want to talk to you about the being in terms of mining the gap. Remember I said the person who shows up as the person who has the vision, who makes the declaration, is not the person who's going to hold it at the end of the day, who's going to achieve it. So there has to be a transformation that needs to occur. Now, most people, they focus on the doing. And they focus on the doing that they believe is right. And remember when I called my friend, she told me some things I needed to do differently, a different amount of doing. She told me you needed to build a network. You don't have one. So that was the doing, but this is the other thing. This is the second layer of it. The next thing you got to do is focus on you, the being. Who are you as you come to the table? So let me share with you what actually occurred for me. So I started learning all these skills and I got really good at it. And I actually started teaching it, and people were like, they were having success, but Suzanne still wasn't. And it was like, what on earth is going on? So this is what was going on. In the background, there was a conversation around money that was running in the background. So I had a mindset that said, don't ask people for money. I had a mindset around making money. I had a mindset about creating wealth. I had a mindset of creating more wealth than I had ever created before. And all these things were getting in the way. So although I was in the doing, I had to work on my thinking, because when I asked people for money, I was saying one thing and thinking another, and the energy, the disconnection, they could feel it and they'd say no. And I had to go and mind the gap. But it wasn't about the behaviors anymore. It was about my thinking. It was about my mindset. It was about transforming this. So I had to go to work and read some books and really begin to look at my relationship to money, my relationship to wealth, my relationship to asking for money. And that's where the work began. I had to work on my inside. I had to go down and look at the roots, right, of my thinking, my beliefs, my conditioning, all the things I habitually thought and did when it came to this thing called asking for money, and my beliefs around money. And I had to do the work. Tria's going, this is good. I know it's good, right? It's kind of cool. So how many of you know that you're maybe doing the right thing, but there's conversations running in the background that are messing you up, and they impact your ability to have self-control? And what I mean by self-control is it impacts your ability to want to stay in the gap, because you may be running towards a destination, but your conversation running you in the background wants to run in the other direction. And usually our automatic way of being, our habitual way of being, our regular mindset tends to win. And we bail, and then we tell ourselves that I don't have enough willpower, I can't commit. And that's not really the issue. It's not about your ability to commit. It's about your ability to understand your own conditioning. It's about your ability to understand what's running you in the background. It's unpacking some stuff. When we were at the retreat, and it's a health, wellness, and fitness retreat, and people kept saying, I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. And what we went to work on was the mindset. We went and unpacked some beliefs, some ways of being, some thinking around this thing called health, fitness, and wellness. And suddenly people had aha moments about their thoughts. And some of their thoughts came from past experiences, right? So if you've ever had people tell you, that's too expensive, no, we can't afford that, around the money conversation, it stays with you, right? If you've grown up with in a family where it's feast or famine, it stays with you. So what we're talking about is not the doing, but what's running you in the background. So when we're talking about minding the gap and having self-control, it's really having an awareness of what is occurring in your world. And once you have that awareness, is to begin to mine it. And what I mean by mine it is to begin to do different things. Once you have an awareness, it's to begin that reprogramming of what you're thinking. And what happens is when things line up, the doing actually occurs with ease, and it's almost like you're pulling your target towards you. So it's that self-control. So we talked about identifying the goals, which was number 3, right? Number 4 is ask who you're being and who must I become? And you will find that there are some shifts in there. And finally, once you mind the gap and you figure out what it is, this is what I'd recommend you do. I'd recommend that you actually create some daily routines and some daily rituals that have you begin to reprogram your way of thinking. So for me, I started reading and reading and reading on finances, on wealth mindset. I started refeeding myself, new information. I started going out and practicing with my new thinking and reinforcing, right? I started listening and spending time with people who were comfortable with wealth that was bigger than mine and modeling their behaviors. So I developed these daily rituals. So I would go to events where people who were already had achieved what I wanted were speaking and telling me what they were thinking. I started reading daily, right? I started kind of making affirmations that were shifting my thinking. And then I started journaling. And whenever something didn't go well, I'd look at it and I'd look at the process. I'd look at the sales process and I'd begin to figure out what was missing, right? So I began to develop these daily rituals and routines. And then I would take action. And after I would take action, I would sit down and I'd evaluate my action and I'd course correct. And so because I wasn't focused on the big goal, but I was moving towards the big goal, I was able to stay in the gap. And every time I had a win, I would celebrate it like it was as big as achieving the goal. Every time I had a success, I would celebrate it as if it was as big as meeting the goal. And because I focused on who I was required to become and the small actions I was required to do, I felt successful. And the gap didn't seem that big, although it was quite significant. The gap suddenly began to feel smaller because I was having these successes in smaller gaps, right? And that allowed me to mind this bigger gap. So why do I say self-control, right? Because what I'm really saying is that in order to stay in the gap, the self-control is you are required to manage my communication. I'm required to manage my emotions. I'm required to manage my thinking. And then I'm required to take that new way of being to new behaviors. But then I had to schedule and consistently do the behaviors that I now knew was required, even when I was fearful, even when I was tired, even when I didn't want to. And that created the shift. And that was the mastery, right? Mastery is mastering the mundane, one. It's doing the things even when you're fearful, doing the things even when you're uncomfortable, and doing the things even after you believe you failed. It is picking up the lesson and keeping it moving. That's mastery. And the reason most people don't mind the gap is they don't pull back and say, what happened? Who am I required to become? What am I needing to do differently? That's the process. So let's see what people are saying. Taria is talking about the retreat. She said, yes, we did. It was so powerful to take a look at what was running in the background. A lot of times we didn't know. Oh my gosh, such a great share, Taria, because we all usually don't know. You don't know until you have a reason to know, right? And so, when I'm talking, why I call it about minding the gap is there's diamonds in each of us. There's gold. There's treasures in each of us. But it's only when we run up against what we think is already our best self, and we have to push beyond our comfort zone, push beyond our fear, push beyond any frustration, push beyond our anxiety, that we actually emerge and transformation happens and we see another version of ourselves, a better version of ourselves. And then we act from that place and we begin the process again. And what we're doing is we're mining for the diamonds that are already in us. We're meeting our next best self. And you hear me say that all the time, meet the next best version of yourself. So, let's see what people are saying. Thank you for joining, Shantaria. Thank you for joining, Dawn. People are saying this is powerful. Welcome back, Bassie. Hello, Lisa Dawn. Wonderful to see you and have you join us. So let us know what you're taking away. Shantaria is saying that's powerful to celebrate the small wins. A great reminder. Small wins make up big wins, right? And so if I was to leave you with anything, I'd say set your big, hairy, audacious goal, the target that just scares you, the target that you think, oh my gosh, I could not do this, right? And then say, what do I have to do to get there? And then go to work on the small things that you have to learn, and go to work on one day at a time. And in each day, look for the win. So at the end of each day, and anyone who works with me knows, I celebrate 10 successes, right? I made all my calls, woohoo, celebrate. I set 2 appointments, yay, celebrate. I had a sale today, yay, celebrate. And I celebrate the daily wins. And then the daily wins turn into weekly, kind of like it feels like grand slams. And those grand slams turn into great months. And those great months move me towards my target. I keep my target in mind, and I'm always making sure that my behaviors and my thinking is lined up with the, so that I'm becoming the person who can achieve the target. Last thing I want to say to you, and this is so key. Remember, we talked about mindset mastery. This is a whole mindset mastery session, and the who am I required to become? So the other thing I did that I did not mention was, as I began to go to events where people who had already achieved what I wanted to achieve were, I started watching their behaviors. I started watching what they did, and I modeled it. Right? Because success always leaves clues. So I started actually just modeling what they were doing. And that's another version of minding the gap. Because oftentimes we bring our old self to a new idea, and we think our old self and our old way of being is going to achieve this new idea. That's not the case. What we want to do is we want to bring our transforming self, our self that's ready to change and grow and expand and learn new things. And we want to model and figure out what people who've already achieved what we want are achieving. And I'll say to you, that takes time, right? That's what happens in the gap. That is what happens in the delay. So next time you think of delayed gratification, I want to leave you with this. Ask yourself, what am I required to do? What am I required to learn? How am I required to transform? And who am I required to become? And take the time to focus on that in the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that you'll now look at the delay as valuable. It is a valuable process, because those who live in the delay and mind the gap end up creating new habits, creating new ways of being, and they meet the next best version of themselves. So that is what I have for you today. I trust this added some value. I trust you had some takeaways. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you want to connect with me, one of the things I want to give away this week is some free strategy sessions around this topic, right? So if you want to connect with me, put mastermind in the comments section, and we will make sure that you receive a link where you can schedule a strategy session with me. And we can walk through some of this and really support you in really minding the gap and living in that delay, and having delayed gratification be something that you totally get. And you're like, yeah, I got this delay. I'm going to become someone spectacular in the journey from where I am to where I desire to be. Everyone, oh, Tracy says, what am I required to do? Who am I required to, what am I required to learn? Who am I required to become? And what do I need to do to transform? Thank you for putting that in the comment section. Everyone, this is Suzanne Hart. This is a Mindset Mastery session. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back here next week with Brother Bedford. I am so excited for this interview. I can't wait to get inside this gentleman's head. Our topic is You Were Born an Entrepreneur. So we're going to talk a little bit about the entrepreneur that lives in each and every one of us. Everyone, blessings. I will see you back here next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.